As we embark on this journey, we step into the past across centuries, continents, and cultures. Through the mist of time, we seek to understand the lives of those who came before us. Their stories, often untold, sometimes misunderstood, still resonate in our world today. Welcome to a journey of power, resilience, and identity, told through the lives of women who defied the odds in ways unimaginable. Before the rise of modern comforts, the Middle Ages were a time of unimaginable hardship, a world where disease, filth, and poverty shaped daily existence. In the absence of sanitation, medical care, and even basic nutrition, survival was an arduous task. This was not the chivalric ideal of knights in shining armor, but a brutal reality where survival came at the cost of suffering. At the heart of this suffering stood the Church, an institution that wielded immense power over the lives of the people. It offered solace but also demanded unwavering obedience. The feudal system, too, cast its heavy hand on the villagers, with lords and kings holding dominion over their every action. The lives of women were particularly grim. Early marriage, dangerous childbirth, and social invisibility were their constant companions. Centuries later, in a world far removed from the medieval struggles, another woman rose to power. Born Sophia von Holtz-Zerbst, a foreign princess who would become Catherine the Great, she was not content with simply being a pawn in the Game of Thrones. Through cunning, intelligence, and an unyielding drive, she seized the Russian crown and began a reign that would reshape an empire. Catherine's reign was one of balance, between the ideals of the Enlightenment and the brutal realities of Russian feudalism. She was an empress, but she was also a strategist, using her intellect to outmaneuver rivals and expand her empire. Her reign was marked by reforms, but also by ruthless pragmatism. Through political alliances and the crushing of uprisings, Catherine proved that power was not simply handed to women, but seized with strength and cunning. In the heart of the ancient Maya civilization, an archaeological discovery would forever change our understanding of power. The Red Queen. Her burial site in Palenque was found in 1994, saturated with the sacred red cinnabar that signified her elevated status. Who was she? Was she the wife, the sister, or the co-ruler of the great king? Her tomb speaks of a complex spiritual and political role, challenging the traditional views of women's place in Maya society. Fast forward to the 20th century, where another woman transformed her suffering into art. Frida Kahlo, sickly as a child, nearly crippled by a bus accident in her youth, used her pain, both physical and emotional, as a canvas for her self-portraits. But her work was not just about personal suffering. It became a radical expression of identity, of Mexican heritage, and of political resistance. Frida's unapologetic exploration of her own body and soul redefined art and carved a place for women in a world that had long tried to silence them. Frida's art transcended her own life, evolving into a voice for the marginalized, the oppressed, and the defiant. In her works, she confronted not only her personal struggles with gender, disability, and love, but also Mexico's complex political landscape. She became, and remains, an icon of resistance, a symbol of resilience, and an eternal reminder that art can be the sharpest weapon in the fight for identity. Through these women, we glimpse the enduring struggle for power, identity, and survival. Whether in the mud-caked streets of medieval Europe, the gilded courts of Russia, the sacred jungles of the Maya, or the vivid canvases of Mexico, their stories remind us that history is not simply a record of events. It is a narrative of resilience, of overcoming the odds, and of redefining what it means to be human. Medieval medicine was a terrifying mixture of superstition, guesswork, and crude practices. With no knowledge of germs, no concept of hygiene, and few effective remedies, doctors relied on theories such as the balance of humors, blood, bile, and phlegm. Bloodletting, leeching, and prayers were considered cures for everything from fever to broken bones. In a world where suffering was constant, these treatments often made things worse, leading to premature death. Justice in the medieval world was swift, brutal, and public. Trials were often more about spectacle than fairness, and punishments were cruel, intended to instill fear. Women were especially vulnerable. Accused of witchcraft, adultery, or simple defiance, many found themselves subjected to violent trials. Torture and execution were seen as necessary to maintain social order, while the true concept of justice was, tragically, a distant ideal. As the medieval darkness began to recede, the Enlightenment ushered in an era of new ideas, freedom of thought, individual rights, and scientific discovery. But these ideals did not immediately reach the masses. They were still distant for most, especially for women like Catherine, who navigated a male-dominated court where her ideas were often met with resistance. Despite the constraints of her time, Catherine's rule was marked by enlightened reforms. She corresponded with Voltaire, reformed Russian law, and expanded education. Yet, she was also pragmatic, willing to quash uprisings and consolidate her rule with iron-fisted control when necessary. In this way, she embodies the delicate balance between idealism and power, a ruler of intellect and force. The Red Queen's tomb, discovered in 1994, was a remarkable find. Covered in cinnabar, a toxic mineral believed to hold spiritual significance, her burial speaks to the power and authority she wielded. Scholars have long debated whether she was a queen consort, a royal ruler in her own right, or even a high priestess. What is clear is that her influence and the reverence she commanded transcended her death, reflecting a world where women could hold spiritual and political sway. The ancient Maya civilization, often portrayed as patriarchal, also reveals a more complex picture. Women, like the Red Queen, held significant power, often serving as high priestesses, advisors, and even rulers. Their positions were not simply ceremonial. They were integral to the spiritual and political life of the kingdom. The Maya saw no sharp distinction between spiritual and temporal power, and women's roles were central to maintaining the cosmic balance. Frida Kahlo was more than an artist. She was a revolutionary. Her work, deeply personal yet universally resonant, redefined art as an act of resistance. Through her self-portraits, she explored her own pain, identity, and politics, confronting societal taboos around gender, disability, and race. Her artistic vision was unapologetically bold, daring to expose what others would rather hide. The love story of Frida and Diego was fraught with contradictions. It was a relationship that defied convention, filled with infidelities, political differences, and emotional turbulence. Yet it was also a partnership that influenced the trajectory of modern art. Through Diego, Frida found both a muse and a challenger, but it was through her own work that she ultimately defined herself, creating art that would resonate far beyond her time. From the medieval struggle for survival to the enlightened reign of Catherine the Great, from the sacred power of the Red Queen to the revolutionary art of Frida Kahlo, these women's stories remind us that history is not a static record. It is alive, dynamic, and ever-changing. They remind us that even in the most challenging of times, there is power to be found in resilience, creativity, and the courage to shape the world on one's own terms. History is not just a chain of events. It is a continuous dialogue between the past and the present. The legacies of these remarkable women challenge us to reconsider our assumptions about power, identity, and survival. Their stories remind us that the past is never truly gone, that we carry its echoes with us, shaping the world we live in today. Power, whether born from struggle or privilege, leaves its mark on history. Across the ages, it has manifested in different forms: medieval feudalism, the imperial court of Catherine, Maya theocracy, and the artistic revolution sparked by Frida Kahlo. Yet, the underlying thread remains the same. Those who hold power often change the world around them, and those who wield it most effectively are those who understand its weight and its consequences. Throughout medieval Europe, women were often relegated to the shadows of history, seen as wives, mothers, or subjects. Their contributions were often overlooked or reduced to mere footnotes. Yet, despite the harsh constraints of their time, they managed to carve out spaces for themselves. Whether through their roles as queens, abbesses, or traders, their influence, though less visible, was essential to the survival of their societies. Their stories are hidden in the margins of the past, but they are no less significant. Catherine's reign, while outwardly one of grandeur, was marked by constant political upheaval and subtle revolution. She understood the importance of both diplomacy and brute force. What often went unseen were the quiet revolutions she carried out, reforms that expanded education, increased cultural influence, and slowly pulled Russia toward a new era. Yet, for all her successes, the weight of her power, the sacrifices she made, and the betrayal she faced were constant reminders that leadership often demands more than the world is willing to give. The Red Queen's tomb revealed not just the artifacts of an ancient civilization, but the complex roles that women played in Maya society. Her role was not just that of a consort, but that of a spiritual guide, a powerful figure who existed in the realm between the divine and the mortal. The proximity of her tomb to that of the king suggested a partnership in rulership, one where women were central to maintaining the cosmic order. In the world of the Maya, women were not passive figures. They were active participants in shaping the course of history. Frida Kahlo's art was her rebellion. With every brushstroke, she confronted the limits of her body and the boundaries of society. Through vibrant and painful imagery, she redefined the way women, and especially women in pain, were allowed to exist in the world. Her portraits are not merely depictions of suffering. They are defiant declarations of self-identity, rejecting the prescribed roles that society sought to impose upon her. Frida became not just an icon of the Mexican Revolution, but also a symbol of feminist defiance that would echo for generations. Whether it was through the oppressive conditions of medieval life, the icy halls of Russian power, the sacred halls of Maya royalty, or the fervent colors of Mexican art, these women navigated worlds of pain and power. Yet, they found within themselves the strength to break free from their prescribed roles and forge identities that resonated far beyond their lifetimes. Their stories remind us that identity is never fixed. It is a constant act of resistance against the forces that seek to define us. Today, we are the heirs to the legacies of these women. Their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs have shaped the world we inhabit. They have rewritten the narrative of what it means to be a woman in power, and their influence continues to be felt in every corner of the globe. From the halls of government to the artist's studio, women now stand at the forefront of history, redefining what is possible. And while the struggles remain, the path they forged has made it just a little bit easier for those who come after. As we reflect on the lives of these incredible women, we realize that their stories are not confined to the past. They are alive in the stories of women today, in the strength, wisdom, and resilience they carry with them. History, after all, is not a closed chapter. It is an ongoing narrative, written by those who dare to challenge the status quo. The lives of these women, spanning centuries and cultures, remind us that power is not just about ruling. It is about enduring, about resisting, and about carving a space for one's voice in a world that often tries to silence it. And so, the tapestry of time unfolds. It is woven from the stories of those who came before us, their struggles and triumphs, their voices and silences. As we stand at the crossroads of history, we carry forward their legacies. These women, who defied the limitations imposed upon them, invite us to continue the work they began. The future is not yet written, but it is in our hands, and in the hands of those who will carry the torch of power, identity, and resistance long after we are gone. Memory is a powerful force. It shapes who we are, where we come from, and how we understand ourselves in the world. The stories of these women are not merely artifacts of the past. They are living legacies, continuously reshaped by scholars, activists, and artists. The way we remember them speaks to the values and biases of our own time. History is never static. It evolves just as we do. And in this evolution we find ourselves, our identities, and our place in the world. The Red Queen's tomb reveals much more than the rich material culture of the Maya. It reveals the complex role of women within Maya society. Contrary to the patriarchal lens through which history often views ancient civilizations, the Maya understood power as something deeply intertwined with both male and female forces. The Red Queen's burial, lavish and ritualized, speaks of her dual role, both as a political figure and as a spiritual leader. Her tomb is a testament to a society where women were seen not as passive figures, but as essential players in shaping the cosmos and ruling the land. From the ancient world to the modern era, women have always been more than just figures of domesticity or subjugation. They have been co-architects of empires, shaping the fate of nations, economies, and cultures. Catherine the Great's expansion of Russia, the spiritual leadership of the Red Queen, and Frida Kahlo's radical artistic transformation are just a few examples of how women, throughout history, have used their intellect, creativity, and resilience to reshape the world. Their influence goes beyond traditional political structures, into art, culture, and philosophy, leaving an indelible mark on history. Frida's art is not just an exploration of pain, but a powerful declaration of identity. Each of her self-portraits challenges the notion of self-image, turning the canvas into a battlefield where she confronted both her internal and external struggles. Her distinctive style, steeped in Mexican folk art, political symbolism, and personal symbolism, became her defiant voice in a world that often tried to silence her. In her work, pain transforms into power, and every stroke of the brush is an act of resistance. History has often been simplified, romanticized, and reduced to a few grand narratives. But behind the myths and stories we are told, there lies the raw, often painful reality of those who lived through these times. The medieval world, for example, was not filled with chivalrous knights and elegant castles. It was a harsh existence for most. For women, it was even more brutal. The real stories of hardship, survival, and strength are too often left out of history books. It is up to us to challenge these simplifications and uncover the true complexity of the past. Today, women continue to rise from the shadows of history, amplifying their voices in every corner of the world. The struggles of Frida, Catherine, and the Red Queen laid the groundwork for a modern era where women are not just subjects of history, but active agents in shaping the future. Feminism, in its many forms, has allowed for new voices to emerge, reclaiming space, power, and identity. These women, from the distant past to the present, remind us that the fight for equality and recognition is ongoing. But with each generation, the walls built by centuries of patriarchy are slowly being dismantled. While the stories we've told are rooted in distinct cultures and times, they share a common thread, a thread that unites women across the world and throughout history. Women from all corners of the globe have faced similar struggles, yet have used their unique cultures and traditions to fight for their place in the world. Whether in the form of art, politics, or spiritual leadership, women's voices have been integral in shaping the course of history, and continue to do so today. The future of women's power is still being written, and it is being written by those who dare to challenge, to innovate, and to resist. From the artists to the leaders, from the activists to the educators, women are leading the charge toward a future of equality and empowerment. We have only to look at the past to understand how far we have come, and how far we still have to go. But one thing is clear: the legacies of Frida Kahlo, Catherine the Great, and the Red Queen will continue to inspire generations to come. As we conclude this journey through time, we remember that the struggles of the past are never truly gone. They live on in us, in the choices we make, and in the way we treat one another. The enduring legacies of these incredible women are not just stories of power and triumph. They are stories of survival, resistance, and hope. They remind us that, no matter the era or the challenges we face, we too can leave our mark on history. History is not just something that happened to us, it is something we continue to write. The stories of Catherine, Frida, and the Red Queen challenge us to ask, what will our own legacy be? What will we leave behind for the next generation? These women did not wait for history to choose them. They chose to make history. Their lives were filled with struggle, pain, and defiance, but they also seized opportunities to create new narratives. Today, it is our turn to pick up the pen and continue writing our own stories. The work is not finished. The stories of these women show us the immense power and potential of women, but also the deep struggles they face to be heard, to be seen, and to be respected. Today, women around the world continue to fight for equality, for their voices to be acknowledged, for their right to lead. And though much has changed since the times of Catherine the Great, Frida Kahlo, and the Red Queen, there is still work to be done. Their legacy lives on in the movements, the struggles, and the victories that women everywhere continue to fight for. For too long, history has been told through a narrow lens, one that often silences the voices of women and relegates them to secondary roles. But as we look closer, we see that women have always been at the heart of history, shaping the course of events in ways we have yet to fully recognize. To truly understand the past, we must challenge the myths and rewrite the narratives that have been constructed over centuries. The stories of Catherine, Frida, and the Red Queen are not anomalies. They are the stories of countless women who shaped and continue to shape the world. The future we envision is one where women are no longer bound by the chains of historical limitations. A future where gender is not a barrier to opportunity, and where the voices of women are heard as loudly as any others. This is the future these women fought for. Catherine the Great's empire building, Frida Kahlo's rebellion through art, the Red Queen's leadership within the Maya. These are not just stories of individual achievement, but of a collective vision that transcends time. The future of women in power is not only possible, it is inevitable. Resilience is the thread that binds us. Throughout history, women have faced unimaginable adversity. Yet, despite every challenge, they have risen again, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. The stories of Catherine, Frida, and the Red Queen show us that resilience is not just about surviving. It is about shaping the future, about forging paths where there were none. These women, and countless others, stand as proof that the strength of women is a force that can never be extinguished. As we look around us, we see that the legacy of female leadership is no longer confined to the past. It is alive and thriving in the present. Every woman who steps into a leadership role, every artist who challenges the status quo, every activist who pushes for change, carries forward the torch passed by those who came before them. The legacy of Catherine the Great, the Red Queen, and Frida Kahlo is not just something we remember. It is something we continue to build upon, stone by stone, in every corner of the world. The history of women is not a story of separation, but one of connection. From Catherine's Russian court to the sacred tombs of the Maya, from Frida's vibrant canvases to the quiet strength of medieval women, their stories are bound together by a common thread, a thread of perseverance, courage, and vision. It is a history we all share. The women who came before us laid the foundation, but it is up to us to carry their legacy forward, to continue to fight, create, and resist. Together we shape the future, and so we come full circle. The stories of the past continue to illuminate the present, guiding us as we chart our course into the future. The strength of these women, these warriors of history, reminds us that the future is never fixed. It is shaped by the choices we make today, by the stories we choose to tell, and by the legacy we choose to carry forward. The circle of time is not a straight line, but a cycle that continues to evolve, and with each turn we add our own voices to the narrative. Together we create history. Women's voices have always been present in history, though sometimes muted or dismissed. From the ancient queens who ruled with wisdom and power to the modern activists who fight for equality, each woman's voice contributes to the collective narrative of human progress. Catherine the Great, the Red Queen, Frida Kahlo, they are not isolated stories. They are part of an ongoing chorus of women across the ages who have fought to be heard. Theirs is a shared legacy of defiance, vision, and change. To stand alone is one of the greatest acts of courage. These women, Catherine, the Red Queen, Frida, stood alone at times, forging paths where none existed. They did not conform to expectations, and in doing so, they shaped the world around them. Their courage was not the absence of fear, but the determination to move forward despite it. And in that courage, they laid the groundwork for all those who would follow, showing us that we, too, have the strength to stand tall and carve our own path. The battle for equality is far from over. Today, women continue to challenge the systems of power that limit their opportunities. Whether in politics, business, or creative expression, women are claiming spaces that were once closed to them. The legacies of women like Frida, Catherine, and the Red Queen live on in every field of endeavor, from the boardroom to the gallery to the streets. They remind us that the fight for women's rights is a global one, and its success depends on the efforts of every woman who dares to challenge the status quo. Today, women are leading new renaissances in both the arts and sciences. Frida's unapologetic, visceral exploration of identity continues to inspire artists to break barriers and express their truth. In labs and classrooms, women are making groundbreaking discoveries that will shape the future of technology, medicine, and environmental sustainability. Like the women who came before them, they are defining new frontiers, pushing the boundaries of what was once thought impossible. Their stories are as powerful as those of their historical foremothers, and they carry the same flame of resistance and progress. Legacy is not only about what we leave behind, it's about who we pass the torch to. The lives of these women echo through time, reaching us today, lighting our way forward. Their achievements have inspired generations of women to stand up, speak out, and pursue their dreams. And it is now our responsibility to pass that torch to the next generation, helping them see that the limits of the past do not have to define the future. The power we carry is not ours alone. It is the power of all the women who came before us, and all those who will follow. Leadership is no longer defined by one single mold. Today's leaders are as diverse as the world they lead. Women from all backgrounds are breaking through barriers, proving that power is not about domination, but about vision, empathy, and collaboration. Whether in politics, business, or social justice, women are redefining what it means to be a leader. The world is ready for leadership that values compassion as much as ambition, that seeks equality as much as success. These women, like Frida, Catherine, and the Red Queen, are the trailblazers, the architects of a new world. As we look across the world, we see the light of women's leadership shining in every corner. From the bustling streets of New York to the fields of India, from the political halls of Europe to the artistic centers of Mexico, women are leading the charge for change. They are reshaping society, creating new opportunities, and paving the way for future generations. The legacy of women like Catherine the Great, the Red Queen, and Frida Kahlo is not a distant past. It is a living, breathing force that continues to shape our world. And it will continue to guide us into the future. The stories of these women, powerful and defiant, are our stories. Their struggles, their triumphs, their legacies, they are not confined to the pages of history books. They live in us, in the choices we make, in the way we challenge the world around us. Just as the river reflects the sky, we are all part of this ongoing story. And in each of us lies the potential to shape the future, to write our own chapter in the history of women's power. The future is ours to shape. We stand on the shoulders of giants, looking toward a horizon filled with infinite possibilities. The stories of the Red Queen, Catherine the Great, and Frida Kahlo are not just tales of the past. They are blueprints for the future. As we walk into that future, we carry with us the strength, the courage, and the wisdom of the women who came before us. And together, we will continue to break barriers, to inspire, and to lead the way for those who follow. And so, the circle continues. We write the future, and in doing so, we honor the past. The legacy of women's strength, resilience, and power will never fade. It will live on, in us, in the generations to come, and in the stories we tell. The circle of time is endless. Time does not erase the past. It gently folds it into the fabric of our present. In every decision we make, in every question we ask, the echoes of those who came before us are there, softly guiding us. Catherine's political courage, the Red Queen's sacred silence, Frida's wild, beautiful defiance. They speak to us, not in grand speeches or battles, but in the stillness of the night, in the choices we make when no one is watching, in the quiet strength we carry within ourselves. The world has always been moved forward by the quiet determination of women. Not always in the light of history books, not always in the echoes of triumph, but in the humble work of living, in the raising of children, in the telling of truth, in the unflinching presence in times of hardship. Women carry the world, and often do so unseen. And now, as the night wraps itself around you, rest, knowing that you are part of this story. You are not alone. You are not without purpose. The strength of queens, the fire of artists, the wisdom of the ancients, it lives within you. Sleep now, dear dreamer. Let the whispers of history cradle your mind. Tomorrow you may rise and carry the story forward. History is not finished. It is never finished. Continues with each breath you take, each moment you choose to listen, to learn, to act. Catherine the Great, the Red Queen, Frida Kahlo, their voices did not fall silent. They live on in the quiet power of women who dare to exist fully. As you rest tonight, remember, you too are history in the making. Sleep gently, dream deeply. You are part of a legacy, vast and unending. The Middle Ages were not golden or grand for most. Beyond the halls of kings and the pages of chivalric tales, there were the silent lives of millions. Farmers, shepherds, midwives, weavers. Lives tethered to land, sky, and survival. In a small village nestled between cold rivers and deep woods, the day begins as it always has, with breath, labor, and prayer. She has no name in history books, but her hands fed generations. Her mornings begin before light. Her body aches before breakfast, yet she sings as she works. The song is older than she is, passed from mother to daughter like a whispered spell. She is one of millions, anonymous, powerful, enduring. Beyond the muddy village roads, another kind of silence rules, a monastic quiet, broken only by the scratching of quills. Here monks speak to the divine with ink. They preserve knowledge, but rarely question it. In a world where truth is dictated by the church, these pages decide who remembers and who is forgotten. Life pulses through the market square, raw and real. Coins clink, bargains barked, bread shared, rumors of plague whispered. Among the clamor, a woman barters for onions, her eyes darting toward a priest approaching. One misstep, a glance, a rumor, and she could be accused of witchcraft. In this world, survival depends not just on strength, but silence. Behind thick walls and guarded gates, the nobility live by a different rhythm. She is educated, fluent in Latin prayers and courtly speech, but her freedom is as fragile as lace. Her marriage is a treaty, her children heirs, her thoughts best kept to herself. For even here, in embroidered halls, a woman's voice carries little weight. She knows which roots ease childbirth, which leaves soothe fever. She learned from her grandmother, who learned from hers. But in a world ruled by fear and faith, knowledge like hers is dangerous. One sick child, one suspicious priest, and the fire may come for her too. Justice in the Middle Ages was not blind. It saw women clearly, as temptresses, witches, or wives. Trials were public, brutal, and brief. Whether accused of theft, heresy, or simply knowing too much, the verdict was rarely mercy. She does not speak now. What would be the point? She has no husband, no children. Her life is quiet and unseen. Yet she returns each night to this place, to kneel in shadow, to plead with saints, to believe in something greater. Her faith is not loud, but it is real. And in that faith, she finds strength no sword can match. The centuries pass, but for most, life remains the same. A life of toil, of routine, of quiet resistance. Her name is never carved into stone. No portraits are painted. Yet she lived. She mattered. And without her, history would not have turned. And then came the silence. The bell no longer rang for weddings or saints' days, but for death. The plague did not knock, it burst in. Cough, fever, a body cold by morning. She buried her father, her sister, her baby. And still she rose to tend the fire, to boil water, to whisper prayers through trembling lips. She chose this, a life sealed inside a tomb of stone. She is an anchorite, a holy recluse, shut away to pray without distraction. Her voice echoes only in her own mind. Yet villagers believe her prayers hold weight in heaven. They come to the window, to ask, to weep, to hope. She listens and prays. In winter, food is more memory than promise. She slices the loaf thin, careful not to show her hunger. Yet tonight there is laughter. Her son has learned a new word. Her daughter has woven her first braid. It is not wealth, but it is life. And for now, it is enough. She dreamed of books, of cities, of walking unchaperoned in a garden of marble. A foolish dream, her mother would say. But in that dream she spoke her mind. She held a map. She wore no veil. She was not afraid. The dream fades with the dawn, but the longing stays. They say she consorted with devils, that she whispered secrets to the moon, that she cursed a cow and caused a stillbirth. But some say she only healed and spoke too plainly. Fire is a quick teacher. The lesson: be smaller, be quieter, be forgettable, or burn. She walks daily between two worlds, life and death, blood and breath. No physician will enter this cottage. No noble hand will help, but she will. With herbs, hot towels, whispered hymns, and iron courage. If the baby lives, there is joy. If not, she buries it quietly and tries again tomorrow. They tell her her voice is not needed, but she has found another way. She embroiders it into lace, scratches it into bread dough, carves it on the underside of a pew. She exists, she sees, she remembers, and somewhere in secret she is writing her own name into the world. Night falls again. The day's labor ends, but not her story. Her feet are cracked, her prayers are weary. Her name is not known beyond the valley, but her strength, her quiet, unshakable strength lives on. In all who came after, in all who still endure, far from the smoky hearths and frostbitten fields, another story begins. A young girl, far from home, prepares to enter a world not made for her. She will cross borders, rewrite empires, shape centuries. But for now, she watches snow fall in silence, unaware that one day she will be called Catherine the Great. There is a place beyond language, beyond empire, beyond calendars and thrones. A space untouched by fire or conquest, where women who once bore history on their shoulders come to sit in silence, to rest, and to remember what the world forgot. They arrive not as queens, nor peasants, nor painters, but as breath, as memory made whole. They do not bow. They do not speak at first. They look at one another and understand. Each flame carries a life once lived. The ache of bending in the field while the church bells rang for others. The sharp perfume of oil paint and morphine in a Mexico City twilight. The hush of court whispers plotting betrayal behind golden doors. The rustle of jaguar pelts and obsidian in a temple carved for gods. Each woman steps forward, her soul poured into the flame. But the fire does not consume them. It remembers them. They do not need words. History spoke over them too long. Their silence is not emptiness, but choice. Instead, they let their hands speak. A touch on the wrist, a braid unloosed, a shared tear that falls not out of sadness, but release. I had no name in the books you read, no stone with my story etched in it. But I bled into the earth that fed your kings. I watched my daughters born into hunger, and still I sang to them. Do you hear it now? That lullaby under the wind was always mine. I ruled the largest landmass on earth. And still I was called too much, too loud, too smart, too foreign, too female. They praised my reforms, then cursed my lovers. They feared my intellect, 'cause it could not be controlled. I wore velvet while peasants starved. I signed decrees I knew would harm. But I held a nation in my palm, and I kept it from breaking. No man ruled without blood on his hands. Why then did they expect my hands to stay clean? She does not speak. She does not need to. The earth around her listens. The ancestors sing through her steps. Her burial was ceremony. Her silence, deliberate. The air shifts when she moves. Even the stars bow when she lifts her eyes. They tried to call me a victim. Well, I was a volcano walking on crushed bone. I didn't want pity. I wanted truth, to show what a woman looks like when she stops pretending she's unbroken. My art was not therapy. It was testimony. And then the world opens, not just for women but thousands, tens of thousands. Every woman history forgot, every voice erased. They are here. They do not demand revenge. They do not scream. They simply appear. And in their presence, the world becomes honest. If you wake, remember us. Not as symbols, not as saints, but as women. Real, terrible, tender, made of blood and breath and choice. May your dreams be full of our stories. And may you carry us in the quiet moments when no one sees you. For that is when we lived, and when we live again. History is not a line. It is a thread, pulled, broken, tied, hidden. And in its deepest weaves, there are women. Women who spoke in kitchens, in courts, in caves. Women who bled behind veils. Who stitched themselves into silence, but still held the world together. Each of them left something behind. Not in statues or crowns, but in breath, in rhythm, in instinct. You feel them when you whisper to yourself in the dark. When you say, "I'll try again." Catherine did not inherit peace. She took it, then made it into empire. But what did she lose in the taking? A husband, name, a country that never called her its own. And yet she ruled. With wit, with danger, with beauty weaponized. She wrote her own laws in a language she had to learn. She bent history until it could not forget her. Power does not forgive a woman's brilliance, so she made it fear her instead. The Red Queen never wrote a decree, never painted her face for portrait, but her bones changed everything. They opened her tomb expecting a king. Instead they found silence, wrapped in red. She ruled in a language older than empire, the language of ritual, of lineage, of sacred blood. She knew, to be a woman buried with honor is to still be speaking long after breath is gone. Frida never wanted to be legend. She wanted to walk again, to laugh without pain, to keep a child inside her body. But fate gave her colors instead of comfort, so she made her pain holy. She did not paint herself because she loved her face. She painted herself because it was the only thing she still had. And in doing so, she gave voice to every wound that had been hidden. She painted pain until it became beauty. She painted death until it bloomed. You will not find her in books, but she lived in the margins, and margins too shape the page. She taught her daughters to boil water clean, to speak softly when the priest passed, to sing to the animals before slaughtering them. She bore children she could not afford to love gently. She buried others before they had names. She survived winters that wanted her gone. And in her smallness, she carried more history than any general with medals on his chest. What do we carry from them? Not their crowns, not their bones, not their brushes. We carry their defiance, their refusal to vanish. When we speak with purpose, Catherine stirs. When we tend to wounds, Frida paints. When we honor the silence, the Red Queen watches. And when we endure, the peasant sings again. The dream ends, but the flame does not. You saw them tonight, not in body, but in spirit. They do not ask to be worshipped, only remembered, only carried, only seen. Sleep now, and let them walk with you, into your dreams, into your courage, into your becoming. For you too are writing history, not in books, but in how you wake, how you endure, how you love. For centuries the jungle kept her secret. Roots covered her tomb, rain smoothed her name. Palenque fell silent. The Red Queen slept, surrounded by stone and song and sacred dust. In 1994 they opened the earth, found her not by name, but by presence. Her tomb was soaked in red, cinnabar sacred and deadly. Her bones were ancient, female, noble. And beside her, obsidian blades, jade, symbols of the sun and death. She was not an afterthought. She was a queen. Cinnabar, mercury sulfide, the color of blood, power, sacrifice. To the Maya, red was more than pigment. It was the breath of gods, the soul's passage, the sacred thread between life and death. To be buried in cinnabar was to be reborn. They laid her gently as the stars dictated. Her hands curled like leaves. Her skull faced the underworld. Her breath now belonged to the gods. She was not mourned. She was honored, a vessel of spirit, a queen of the sacred order. Historians still ask, was she Pakal's wife, a high priestess, a queen regent? Her name is lost, but not her meaning. Her power lives in absence, in questions, in the sacred red silence she left behind. To be Maya and female was to walk the line between heaven and earth. Blood was life, pain was offering, each birth was cosmic, each ceremony a portal. The Red Queen was not alone. She was one among many women, bearing the sky on their backs. She lies near him not by accident. In Maya belief, power was not singular. It was dual. The king ruled by day. The queen ruled by night. Together they kept the cosmos in balance. She was not his shadow. She was his mirror. In Maya myth, death is not the end. Xibalba is not a pit. It is a womb. The queen walks there now, not as prisoner, but as pilgrim. Her spirit passes through fire, darkness, water, only to emerge again in the world of maze and sky. You do not need to see her to hear her. Her voice is in the rain, in the rustle of banana leaves, in the breath between thunderclaps. She is gone, and everywhere. Some say she comes in dreams, that if you listen long enough, the dead will speak. The archaeologist woke with tears in her eyes, and the scent of something ancient in the air. Some things can't be translated, only felt. Her legacy is not name nor statue. It is presence. She lives in the rituals we forget, the strength we inherit, the mysteries we carry in our blood without knowing. Her tomb is not her end. It is our beginning. And now we cross again, to a woman who painted her wounds, who stitched her soul in brushstrokes, a woman of pain, of pride, of fire, another queen, not of kingdoms, but of self. Frida awaits. For centuries, the jungle kept her secret. Roots covered her tomb. Rain smoothed her name. Palenque fell silent. The Red Queen slept, surrounded by stone and song and sacred dust. In 1994 they opened the earth, found her not by name, but by presence. Her tomb was soaked in red, cinnabar sacred and deadly. Her bones were ancient, female, noble. And beside her, obsidian blades, jade, symbols of the sun and death. She was not an afterthought. She was a queen. Cinnabar, mercury sulfide, the color of blood, power, sacrifice. To the Maya, red was more than pigment. It was the breath of gods, the soul's passage, the sacred thread between life and death. To be buried in cinnabar was to be reborn. Before the flowers, before the fame, she was just a child, with a crooked spine and mismatched legs. At 6, polio crept into her muscles, made her limp. But she did not ask for pity. She wore boys' clothes, climbed trees, walked faster than anyone, just to prove she still could. She found the first canvas in her own reflection. Not vanity but understanding. Her face was a puzzle, a question. Where do I begin, she wondered. And when do I stop being what others expect? At 18, her life shattered. The bus crashed. Her spine broke in 3 places. Her collarbone, her ribs, her pelvis. A handrail pierced her womb. The doctors said she might not live. She lived. Pain stayed. She could not dance, could not walk, could barely move. So she painted, and painted, and painted. She turned her body into mythology, her scars into scripture. She did not seek escape. She painted the truth. She met him with fire in her eyes and a painting in her hand. He was 20 years her elder, with hands like stone and a heart full of revolution. He loved her mind, her wildness, her refusal to be small. Together they would create and destroy. Love for Frida was never soft. It was political, explosive, public. Diego was her storm. She called him her accident, the second one. Yet she stayed. In his shadow she built her own light. Not behind him, beside. She painted herself 100 times. Not out of ego but survival. Her art was Mexico. Broken, stitched, bleeding, alive. She wore her roots like armor, her brow like a crown, her pain like a hymn. They called her grotesque, too personal, too raw. She smiled. Let them look. She painted miscarriage, surgery, desire, despair. She painted what others hid. And in doing so, she made suffering sacred. They praised her beauty, misunderstood her work, and posed her for magazines. But they didn't know her soul. She spoke little. She missed her dogs, her garden, the agave wind of Coyoacán. The foreign world glittered, but never held her. Her bones betrayed her again. One leg was lost, the other barely moved, but she still painted. In pain, in morphine haze, in silence. Every stroke was a rebellion. Breath, a refusal to disappear. 8 days before death, she painted fruit. Watermelons, sweet and blood-bright. She signed it in a shaky hand. Viva la vida! Even as her body failed, her joy refused to. They called her Diego's wife. Tragic muse. An eccentric. An icon. Saint of pain. Queen of color. But she was always more than legend. She was Frida. She was truth painted alive. Each lived in different times, spoke different tongues, wore different scars. But all of them resisted silence. All of them carved their names in the stone of history, not with swords, but with breath, with art, with blood, with fire, with survival. Sleep now, and know their stories. Let them echo inside your dreams. For history is not only kings and battles. It is women who dared to live, who dared to be seen. And now, you carry them with you. Pain does not ask who you are. It finds the peasant bent over cold soil. It finds the empress behind velvet curtains. It finds the queen whose breath is red dust. It finds the girl who paints with shaking hands. But pain can be a teacher. Mirror. Forge. Catherine turned hers into policy. The Red Queen into ritual. The peasant into endurance. Frida into art. And you, what will you make of yours? Silence was their first language. Before crowns, before canvas, before rebellion, there was hush. A silence that protected. A silence that stifled. A silence that, at times, was safer than speech. But silence also waits. for the brave to shatter it. Frida broke it with a brush. Catherine broke it with law. The Red Queen broke it with death. The peasant broke it by whispering her daughter's name in the dark. And you? What silence lives inside you? Still unbroken. Every woman carried fire, not always seen, sometimes just an ember under ash. But fire is patient. Wait until one moment, one word, one dream, one rage, and the whole world glows. Catherine's fire built cities. Frida's fire broke bones and still burned brighter. The Red Queen's fire was passed from priestess to priestess. The peasant's fire, it stayed alive through famine, war, forgetting. And now, it is yours. Guard it, feed it, burn what no longer serves you. Nothing ends, not truly. The body breaks, the empire fades, the painting cracks, the name is lost. But the essence, the breath of what they were, it returns, through new hands, new voices, new daughters. Catherine becomes every girl who reads by candlelight, daring to lead. Frida becomes every artist who paints their wound in full color. The Red Queen becomes every priestess of spirit, of silence, of unseen power. And the peasant becomes every mother who gives her last bite to her child. Rebirth does not require temples. Only memory, only love. You who are listening, you are not outside this story. You are its continuation. The thread runs through your hands now. Whether you raise your child or your voice, whether you mend broken things, or simply refuse to disappear, you are weaving. The stories you carry in your chest are older than you know, but still unfinished, still burning, still becoming. Sleep now, in the comfort of knowing that history does not move without you, that every act of care, every truth whispered aloud, every time you rise when you could break, you call their names, and they call yours in return. There is a place deeper than archives, beyond libraries, beyond the vaults of museums or the songs of kings. It is the place where memory hides those it cannot carry, where names are worn down by time, where tombs were never carved, where stories were not written, but whispered, and then forgotten, but not forever. Tonight we walk into that space, not to rescue, but to listen, not to retell, but to remember. She had no books, no degrees, no copper instruments, only hands that knew the rhythm of pain. For 40 winters, she caught children as they fell into this world. She cut cords with clean blades, pressed tears into foreheads, whispered blessings in 3 languages, none of them written. And when the last baby she caught was her own granddaughter, she smiled and said, "I have done enough." She died without anyone carving her name, but every cry she answered still echoes. Her hands were made of earth. Every pot she made held something sacred: grain, salt, fire, rainwater, milk. No coin bore her face, but without her work, no child would have been fed, no hearth would have warmed, no offering would have reached the gods. When empires fell and palaces burned, her bowls survived, buried in ash, still holding soot, still whispering. She was here. She could not read, but she could weave, and so she wove stories into fabric. She wove her daughter's laughter in gold, her mother's warnings in green, her lost brother's name in red. When her village burned, her tapestries were taken for ransom, hung in cold halls by men who would never know that their glory was wrapped in a girl's quiet grief. Her legacy was cloth, her memory was pattern. She spoke through color, and we are still learning her language. She was stolen, sold 3 times before she turned 15. But no chain could erase the map she carried in her mind. She kept the language of her grandmother behind her teeth. She sang it in lullabies, disguised as hums. One night, alone in the cellar, She carved a symbol into the stone. It meant, "You are not alone." Then she covered it again and waited. It was found 2 centuries later by a girl who traced the spiral with her finger and cried. Though she didn't know why, something happened. No one recorded what. Scream, maybe. Betrayal. A silence too deep to undo. After that day, she never spoke again. But she listened. To birds. To bells. To wind. And once, to a dying woman who whispered, "You are the last to remember me." She nodded and kept walking. When she died, her neighbors said, "She was quiet." But quiet is not empty. Sometimes it holds more than speech ever could. There are women who do not seek the flame. They are the flame. They do not lead armies or sign treaties. But when the last torch dims, they are the ones who remember how to start it again. They are the fire keepers, the breath holders, the secret holders. They live in the edges of stories. But without them, stories end. And when they finally leave this world, the embers they lit still burn in every hand that dares to carry the light forward. How many women did we lose? How many names turned to ash? How many faces faded from photographs, from prayers, from pages? They were not less than queens, not smaller than saints. They were simply unseen. But tonight, you have seen them. You who lie now beneath your blanket, you carry them in your breath. Sleep now, not in sorrow, but in reverence. You are part of something vast, older than books, stronger than kings, more sacred than gold. You are made from the threads they left behind. And every time you wake, they rise again in you. There is a place beyond years, a garden beyond age, where time grows like moss on stone, where everything forgotten waits patiently to be remembered. And in the center of that garden, there stands a mirror. No one built it. It was always there. Some say it was the first tool. Others say it is the last test. But all who look into it see something different. Does not show your face. Shows your lineage. Shows your pain. It shows the hands that held you when you were too young to hold yourself. Shows the voice you swallowed when the world was too loud. Shows you, not as the world sees you, but as the women before you still carry you. When Catherine looks into the mirror, she sees more than empires. She sees the girl she was, 12 years old, teeth too large for her jaw, dreaming in German of a world she was not born into. She sees herself learning new words, failing to speak them, trying again because to fail was to vanish. She sees the man she married, the child he remained. She sees the men who tried to guide her hand, and how she burned their maps, and drew her own. But the mirror does not flatter her. It shows the rebellions she crushed, the mothers who begged her mercy and found none. It shows the price of power, when taken with clever fingers, and guarded with cold ones. And yet, the mirror forgives nothing, but it forgets nothing either. It shows her planting libraries like seeds, spreading knowledge across frozen land. It shows her alone at night, reading by candlelight, saying, softly saying, "I hope they remember me for more than this." They do, Catherine. They do. When the Red Queen looks into the mirror, she does not blink. She does not move. Because the mirror does not show her death. It shows her continuance. It shows the woman she was. Before the red powder. Before the jade mask. Before the tomb. It shows her dancing beneath a canopy of sacred trees. Feet painted. Face unpainted. Body singing with the voice of the sky. It shows her speaking before priests, not as a supplicant, but as one whose womb had cradled kings. The mirror shows her son's eyes, not yet born, but full of stars. It shows her giving her name to the earth, so her name might rise again in stone. And when she looks away from the mirror, there is no sorrow, She does not wonder if we remember her. She wonders if we are listening. When Frida looks into the mirror, she does not flinch. She is used to mirrors. She has broken a few. The mirror shows her body, twisted like a vine that grew around an old fence. Bones of iron, spine like shattered glass. Shows the bus, the scream, the blood. Metal shows Diego. It shows love like honey poured over thorns. But then, the mirror shifts. It shows her easel, her canvases, the places where she took pain and made it into myth. The mirror shows her womb, empty, aching, painting itself into fruit and flame. It shows a girl in a wheelchair, staring at Frida's work, and knowing, I am not broken, I am burning, and that is enough. Frida nods at the mirror, and then she paints it. When she looks into the mirror, she sees mud beneath her fingernails. She sees hands raw from cold water, and too many winters with too little bread. She sees the child she lost, the one she never named. She sees the man she married, not out of love, but out of the absence of it. The mirror shows her folding crusts of bread into the hands of her children. It shows her hiding coins in the hem of her dress, because no man could be trusted with them. It shows her aging, not gracefully, but gratefully. It shows the silence she carried, and how, in that silence, she spoke 100 truths, without needing a word. And then, the mirror does something strange. Shows you, lying there, breathing slowly, wrapped in your night and your questions. It shows her looking at you and saying, you are not soft, you are sacred, you are not lost, you are becoming. And now, you stand before the mirror, with your weariness, with your doubt, with your quiet hunger to be seen, but your even deeper longing to be understood. You think the mirror will judge you, but it doesn't. Shows you everything you've survived, the nights you thought would break you, the days you carried others while your own back ached, the words you didn't say, because no one would have heard them. Shows you the moments you gave too much and asked for nothing. It shows the scars, not to shame you, but to prove that you healed. It shows your laughter and where it comes from. Shows your softness and why it matters. And then, it shows what they see. When they look at you, Catherine sees your strategy. The queen sees your spirit. Frida sees your flame. The peasant sees your survival. And all of them see a woman becoming, not perfect, not finished, but holy. And the mirror, for just one moment, glows with your light. Let it go now. Let the mirror close. You do not need it tonight. You have seen enough. You are enough. Sleep now, with all of them beside you. Sleep with your ancestors humming in your blood. Sleep as the mirror turns back to stone. Sleep, and rise tomorrow, not as someone new, but as someone seen. Before kingdoms, before fire, before the voice of men wrote the world in stone, there was a hum, a warm hum. It did not come from the sky. Came from below, from the belly of the earth, from the dark, wet place that holds roots and bones and beginning. And from that hum, arose. She had no name, no need for one. She knew who she was, because she had always been. Not a goddess, not a queen, only woman. First, whole, unsplintered. She did not crawl, she did not cry. She stood. She did not hoard the fire. She whispered it to others, those who came after her, born from water and sky. And when they burned their hands, she did not scold. She soothed them. She showed them again. That is the nature of women who begin things. They give what they could keep. And one day death came, not as a monster, not as punishment, but as the cost of having loved. She buried the child beneath a tree that had not yet blossomed. Then she sat there for days, weeks, years perhaps. She did not speak. Grief had become her second skin. But when another child was born, she held it not with joy, but with courage. And that was the beginning of human endurance. She knew the sky could not be tamed, so she taught them how to bend, how to listen to animals, how to read clouds, how to plant where the shadows stayed long, how to wait. Strength is not in stillness, but in softness that does not break. She taught this, not with words, but with example. She was the first to name, not things, but feelings, hunger, longing, sleep, love, grief. She gave language to the ache in the chest, to the warmth in the belly, to the silence after loss. And once named, those feelings could be carried, could be shared. She did not die. She became. Her skin turned to bark, her blood to river, her eyes to stars, and her voice. It became the voice you hear when no one is near, the whisper that tells you, you can go on. You are her. When you rise, though your back aches, you are her. When you say no, though your voice shakes, you are her. When you love, though the world tells you not to, you are her. The first mother is not in the past. She lives in your hands, your breath, your staying. Sleep now, daughter of the first fire. You have remembered enough for one night. Let your body rest in the soil of story. Let your mind wander among mothers. Let your breath join the wind that once whispered the world awake. You are part of something that never ended, only changed shape. And in sleep, you return to the beginning. Does not knock, does not ask. One day it is simply there. Door. Does not gleam, does not glow, does not threaten, does not beg. Waits, will, unchanging, has no handle, has no key, only a feeling, pull, like the breath before a cry, like the silence before a storm. And before it stands a woman, not young, not old, only ready, though she does not know it yet. She does not move, she's not afraid. But the questions come, as they always do. What if I lose everything? What if I am wrong? What if no one waits for me on the other side? What if I forget who I am? And the most dangerous question of all, what if I never deserve more than this? She clutches them tightly. These questions, they feel like truth, but they are not. They are echoes, echoes of those who never touched their own door, of those who watched it open for others and turned away. The door does not speak aloud, does not explain, but when she places her hand upon it, she feels something ancient and unmistakable. It is not a promise, not a threat, it is an invitation, the kind of invitation that cannot be read aloud, only felt in the marrow of your bones. It says, you may stay. No shame in that. The world behind you is known. The patterns are familiar, the pain predictable, the silence tolerable. But if you walk through me, you will not be who you were. You will be changed, shaken, rearranged, remade. And then it says, you do not have to go, but you will never forget that I was here. She looks at her hands. They are not empty. They carry stories no one else remembers. Nights she did not cry because others needed her to be strong. Love she gave away to people who could not keep them. Years she waited. Moments she stayed silent when she should have roared. But also, a laugh she protected. Child she fed. A secret she kept that saved a soul. A kindness no one saw, but which made the world kinder for just a second. The door sees all this, does not judge her. Wait. There is a moment, before the foot lifts, before the weight shifts, before the heart decides. It is quieter than prayer, softer than sleep, more sacred than birth. It is the moment the soul whispers, I am ready, even if the mind still trembles, even if the hands still shake. The readiness is real, and in that moment, the door no longer feels like stone, feels like skin, like breath, like memory, She steps forward. The door opens, not into heaven, not into triumph, not into safety, but into truth. Her truth. It is not loud. It is not perfect. It does not look like anyone else's. It is the shape of her own becoming, the sound of her own breath, the color of her own name, as it is finally spoken aloud. She does not smile. She does not cry. She simply walks, one foot, then another, and the door once open, dissolves. The door will never return, does not need to, because once she stepped through it, she no longer needed permission. She became the opening, the invitation, the crossing. She carries the door inside her now, and everywhere she goes, she opens space for others to find their own. Sleep now, you who have waited at your own door, you who have knocked without answer, you who have feared what comes next. Sleep knowing the door is real, the step is yours, and the world beyond it is ready for you. Sleep with the knowledge that your becoming cannot be undone. You are no longer outside. You are through. And on the other side of fear is freedom. There is a room the world forgot. It is neither prison nor temple, has no door you can see, no time you can name. Inside the room sits a woman. She is not asleep. She is not awake. She is waiting. She does not know for what. She has forgotten how long. The room is not cold, not cruel, not empty. It is simply still, like the breath before a cry, like the sky before it rains. And the woman, she has become that stillness. Once she was a girl with bright fingers and louder footsteps. She laughed too easily. She gave too much. She waited for a letter. Never came. She waited for a return. It never happened. She waited for the world to see her. It looked past her instead. But still she waited. Not with hope. Hope is noisy. Hope is loud. She waited with patience, the kind that sinks into the bones and holds its breath. The days passed like wind over stone. Not cruel, just endless. She stopped counting the seasons. She stopped measuring hunger or loneliness or longing, because those things were no longer sharp. They had softened like stones in a river. She folded the same cloth, lit the same flame, watered the same plant. She whispered the same word to herself, night after night after night. Wait. She learned silence is not empty. It is full of echoes, full of ghosts. She learned stillness is not surrender. It is listening. It is absorbing. It is preparing. She learned that the world outside the room never truly stops moving, but sometimes it forgets to arrive. So she stopped waiting for it, and instead, she listened for herself. She heard her own voice again, not loud, not grand, but real. One night she stood. She went to the place where she believed a door might be. She knocked. She whispered. She waited. Nothing. And for the first time, she did not cry. She did not rage. She did not beg. She simply turned and returned to her waiting, because she understood something few ever do. The waiting is not punishment. It is preparation. It did not arrive in thunder, or music, or drums. The door came quietly, like a soft tide reaching bare feet. It arrived not because she asked, not because she was ready, but because she had become what the door was waiting for. She did not run through it. She did not scream in joy. To walk, steady, sacred. She had learned something the world forgot. To wait is not weakness. It is wisdom. And what she found was not what she waited for. It was not a man, not an answer, not a reward. It was space, silence, peace. It was herself, unburdened by time, unmeasured by success, unchained from expectation. It was the sound of the world, not asking anything from her. It was the breath she had been holding for 100 lifetimes, finally released. She did not shout. She did not dance. She simply stood beneath the stars and let the wind remember her name. You who listen, you too have waited for love, for change, for something to end or something to begin. Let this story remind you, you are not alone in your waiting. You are not wrong to be patient. You are not foolish for believing in what has not yet arrived. Sleep now, not as one forgotten, but as one preparing, because the door may not come tonight, but when it does, you will be ready. Morning was not a choice. It came whether they were ready or not. The fire had died overnight, so it must be coaxed back. From ash and breath, from splinters and hope. There was no clock, only the light, soft gray against the walls. Enough to show the rats had been again. Enough to see the buckets still needed filling. She moved with purpose, though her joints cracked with every bend. The child followed, not out of obedience, but because there was no other way. The day was not about progress. It was about repetition. You rose. You labored. You ate if you could. You prayed. You bled. You slept if sleep came. And then you did it again. Every day. There were no weekends. No rest. Only Sunday, and even then, you worked in silence for your soul, instead of your stomach. To be alive in the Middle Ages was to be constantly moving, yet going nowhere. But still, they moved. The field belonged to the Lord, the harvest to the castle, but the sweat, the blood, the bent backs and broken nails, those belonged to the peasant. They were not farming for themselves. They were tithing with their bodies. The soil took their skin. The sun stole their youth. Their breath came in gasps between swings. Their hands were not rough from work. They were born rough. Callous ran in the blood. And always above, the night watch, not to help, but to count, measure, to ensure the dues were met. It was called fealty, but it was theft, wrapped in banners and oaths. If a man kept a portion of grain for his starving child, he was a thief. If he missed a day to bury his wife, he was fined. The law was written in ink they could not read, and enforced by sword they could not escape. And yet they returned, day after day. They sang low songs to one another in the furrows. They whispered jokes. They spat in the earth behind their master's back. Small rebellions, stitched into survival. They had nothing, but they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough. She screamed, but only once. The rest she swallowed, because pain was not a surprise. It was an expectation. There were no doctors, only women, and prayer, and boiling water. Birth was not sacred. It was dangerous. It was deadly. For every child who took a breath, a mother lost hers. And when both survived, it was a kind of miracle. The room smelled of blood, and sweat, and wet straw. Outside, the stars moved in silence. Inside, her body broke itself open, again and again, to give the world a future that might never thank her. And when it was done, when the cord was cut with a sharpened nail, when the child cried or did not, there was no celebration, only exhaustion, and cleaning, and quiet. She had given birth. Now she must return to life, as though nothing had happened, as though she had not died, and come back, in the space of a single hour. They called it justice. They called it holy. They burned women for speaking too loud, for knowing too much, for having herbs in their homes, for dreaming. The fire was not just heat. It was a warning to all the others to stay small, to stay quiet. A woman who healed the sick with plants could be a witch. A woman who bled without ceasing might be cursed. The priest spoke of cleansing. The crowd prayed. But the flames only consumed. No sin was ever washed away with fire. Only fear. Only questions. And afterward, There was ash on the wind, and silence in the homes. No one spoke of it the next day, not aloud, but every woman remembered, and every daughter learned what not to say. Not every night was sorrow, not every breath was burden. There were moments, tiny, fragile, fleeting, when life felt whole, when music rose from hollow wood, when warmth wrapped the skin like cloth, when laughter, real and unscripted, filled a room like spring rain. They had no gold, but they had stories, they had songs, they had each other. And that night, for a moment, they were not peasants, not servants, not forgotten. They were simply a family, together in the dark, while the world outside howled and turned. And for once, the darkness did not win. The earth was not paved. It was soaked, heavy, clinging. Mud thickened the soles of worn leather. It swallowed wheels, trapped hooves, and splattered skirts. A child wakes not to birdsong, but to coughing, taking, to hunger. Their morning light creeps through smoke and thatch, and there is no silence, only groaning wood, the thud of buckets and the drip, 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 of brown water falling from the eaves. This is not the Middle Ages of myth. No gleaming towers, no polished armor, only toil, and dirt, and the mud beneath their feet. There were no bathrooms, no soap with scent, no mirrors, no towels. To be clean was not a virtue, it was a luxury. They washed only thrice a year, if at all. Lice were constant companions. Fleas stitched bites into their calves and bellies. They did not scream, they scratched. And they carried on. The smell of a body was the smell of survival, of sweating through wool and dirt-caked hands, of manure on boots, of ash in their hair. Even the nobles stank, even the priests. It was the scent of life lived close to the edge. They did not feast, they gnawed. Black bread tough as bark, porridge made of oats and sorrow, turnips again, always turnips, and sometimes bone, not for the meat but for the memory, boiled, sucked, scraped, chewed for the ghost of marrow it once held. Meat was a myth, a dream held by the mouth but never the stomach. The rich dined on venison and pheasant, the poor chewed history, one tooth at a time. She was born to be silent, her words stitched into seams, her thoughts buried beneath calluses. She was mother, daughter, wife, never her own name. 12 she bled, at 13 she wed, at 14 she buried her first child, and no one called it tragedy. It was life, the cradle and the coffin side by side. She bore the weight of the world, without ever lifting her voice. Came on a breeze, or on a rat, or a flea. No one truly knew, but it came. First a cough, then a fever, then black spots blooming beneath the skin, and silence, whole families gone by morning, doors sealed, the red mark painted in trembling hands. Stay away, it warned, but death cannot read. Enters always, softly, completely. The bell rings, low and hollow, it echoes across the thatch and smoke. It is not a call to celebration, it is a summons, to confess, to kneel, to remember your sins and fear them. God was not gentle. He watched from above, eyes burning, hands always ready to strike or deny. They were told they were born broken, and they believed it. Each misstep could mean hell. Each thought, if impure, might rot the soul. They did not ask why. They did not dare. The church was not just stone and sermon. It was the eye of power, the mouth of law, the hand that held the keys to heaven. Inside they were small, dirty, tired, aching, but holy if they obeyed. The women covered their hair, and the men bowed their heads. Children fidgeted in silence. The smoke of tallow candles curled like prayers, thick with the weight of guilt. Outside life was cruel. Inside salvation came at a price. paid in coins they didn't have, in labor they couldn't spare, in fear that never left their hearts. They were told they were saved, but never safe. There were no hospitals, no trained surgeons with soft hands and white coats. There were barbers and butchers, and hope that the bleeding would stop, hope that the fever would break, hope that the pain would pass before the soul did. A tooth pulled not with care, but with pliers, a broken bone set with rope and screams, a fever treated with leeches, or prayers, or worse, mercury and fire. They did not know what a germ was. They blamed spirits, sins, the stars. Diagnosis came from dreams, and treatment from superstition. They bled the sick to balance their humors, drilled skulls to release bad air. Sometimes the patient survived, often they didn't, but the tools remained, iron and rust, rags and ropes, a candle to light the wound, prayer to guide the soul. Pain was not managed, it was endured, it was expected, and when it ended, whether in healing or in death, they gave thanks, for mercy, or for release. Spring was not a time of flowers, it was the hunger season. Winter had stolen the stores. The meat was gone, the bread was mold, the potatoes had sprouted black. They waited for sprouts from the earth, but the earth waited too, and gave them nothing. They dug for roots they could barely name, boiled bark, chewed leather, prayed for weeds. Mothers watched children with sunken eyes. Fathers chopped firewood, not to warm the house, but to forget the ache in their bellies. When the rains came too late, or the frost too early, they died, quietly, together. The church called it fate. The land called it justice. The people called it normal. They kept living, even when living meant barely moving, even when each day was only a slower kind of death. She was born beneath a ticking clock, not of seconds but of blood. When she bled, she was a woman. When she married, she was property. Choice was not hers. The groom was chosen. The dowry was set. The future was decided, not in her heart, but in her father's hands. She may have seen him once, maybe not at all, but now she was his, to cook, clean, bear, child after child, year after year, her body a cradle, her mind a shadow. She was praised for silence, honored for obedience, buried before 40, and no one carved her name in stone, but she lived, and that was its own defiance. They died, and no one wrote it down. No ledgers, no letters, no last words etched in marble. They passed from fever, from childbirth, from starvation, from accident, from violence, from nothing at all. And they were buried beneath shallow earth. Without hymns, priest might mutter a blessing, or he might not. They were peasants, expendable, nameless, yet the world was built on their backs. The roads kings traveled, laid by their hands, the bread that fed nobles, kneaded in their kitchens, the gold in cathedral chalices, dug from earth they would never own. Their deaths were quiet, but their lives were not empty. They laughed, they wept, they sang lullabies, they told stories, they fought for scraps, they held each other through the coldest nights. And though they are forgotten, they mattered, because without them, there is no history, only myth. They lived by the wheel. The turning year was their master, not the king, not the priest. The season. Winter was death in white, spring rebirth with mud and pain, summer labor under an endless sun, and autumn the race, to gather, store, to outpace the coming cold. They did not speak of years. They remembered by harvests, by storms, by the time the river froze early, by the year of the thin goats, the year of the fire, the year the black sickness came. Time was not something they owned. It was something they endured. Turning wheel, grinding, always grinding. They danced, not because they were happy, but because the church said they could. On feast days, the bells rang not with fear, but with permission to laugh, to eat, to forget. For one night, the barley beer ran strong. The meat, saved for weeks, was salted and singed. The children played with wooden hoops. The old men sang broken songs. The women braided flowers into each other's hair. And the fire danced too, tall and wild, bright against a sky heavy with stars. They did not have much, but they had this, one day, to be more than survivors, to be human, fully, freely, defiantly. They danced until the morning broke, and then the work returned. But the memory of the fire, it lingered. Before the sun, they gathered. The market was noise, human and animal, coin and voice. Here the world widened. Here a peasant met a merchant, a smith met a noble, a monk passed by a thief. Everything was for sale. Wool, salted fish, spices from lands they'd never see. Love charms carved in bone, and nails, bread still warm, candles of beeswax and tallow, words traded like silver, gossip sweeter than any fruit. She brought her eggs, he brought his song, another sold his body to hunger. But all came for the same reason, to remember they were not alone, to feel the pulse of something bigger, to hear the rumor of the wider world, carried on foreign tongues and the jingling of bells. By midday it would be gone, and the streets would grow quiet again. But for those few hours, the world was wide and full of wonder. The law wore iron, came on horseback. It spoke Latin they could not understand, but its message was clear. Pay or bleed. Justice was a spectacle, a warning, a ritual of fear. The stocks, the gallows, the wheel. The body was the canvas, pain was the ink, and the crowd watched, 'cause they had to. Children sat on shoulders, old women murmured psalms, men cursed or laughed, some wept, others cheered. The condemned had no defense, no trial as we know it, only guilt or God, and God rarely answered. The axe fell with a sound that stayed in the bones, even in dreams. Afterward, the square was swept, and bread was sold where blood had soaked the stones. Life went on, but the silence lasted longer than the scream. Winter was not a season, it was a presence, crept under doors, slid through cracks in the stone. It wrapped its hands around your feet, and breathed frost into your lungs. Wood ran out, so they burned old stools, old shoes, anything that would crack and hiss in the fire. The food was counted in spoonfuls. The children grew quiet. Sleep came early, and woke them with shivers. He did not say he was hungry. She did not say she was cold. There was no point. Outside, the wind howled like a wolf with no face. Inside, the dark pressed close. But they did not break. They told old stories, held each other, dreamed of green. They had survived worse, and they would again. War did not come with trumpet calls, came with smoke, with silence that stretched too long, with hooves far off, like thunder behind a closed door. The peasant did not choose war. He was summoned to it, pressed into it, given a spear, sometimes a sword, rarely armor. He marched not for glory, but because he had no choice, and the field did not care. It drank blood without favor. Noble and nobody bled the same, died the same. They fought in lines, not for strategy, but for visibility, so the lords could see who obeyed. And when the arrows came, they fell like birds with broken wings. He did not know the politics, 'cause the grievance, only that the man across from him also didn't belong there. And yet, they struck, because they were told to, because someone had to, 'cause the world was like that. Afterward, the field was silent. And the crows began their feast. Not all who healed wore robes. Not all read Latin. Some healed with memory, with root and stem, with smoke and poultice. She was not rich. She was not safe. But she knew the rhythms of the body, the color of the tongue, the sound of a cough, the weight of grief. The priest said prayer cured all. The healer knew better. Sometimes willow bark did more than faith. Sometimes nettle tea could keep death at bay for a little while. But knowledge was dangerous. Power always is. So she spoke softly, took no coin, taught her daughter. With hushed breath and shadowed hand, she saved who she could, and buried who she could not. Her name never made it to the scrolls, but many lived because of her. And in the corners of the village, they whispered it, like a blessing, came again. No one knew how or why, but it returned, as if summoned by fear itself. The black swellings, the fever that boiled the eyes, the bleeding beneath the skin, the silence of whole streets. The priest said it was judgment. The doctors burned incense. The mothers just wept. They buried them in pits. They stopped naming the dead. The Red Cross meant, don't come inside, or don't expect anyone to come out. Children died first, then the old, then everyone else. Whole families erased by a kiss, cough, shared loaf of bread. Some fled to the woods. Some stayed and lit candles. Some turned on each other. Many turned to the sky and begged. But the sky remained very, very quiet. Here the world was still. Within thick stone, the monastery held what the world had forgotten. Music, memories. The monks did not speak often. Their vows made words sacred. So they wrote instead. They copied. They preserved. Each letter inked with care. Prayer in every curve. The scriptures, the histories, the philosophies of men long dead. Ideas that might have been lost. Fire, plague, to kings and conquest. Here in the candlelight, truth lingered. But not only truth, power. Because he who writes history decides who is remembered and who is not. Outside the peasants starved. Inside the quills danced. And centuries later, we still read their words, even if they never once wrote the name. He knew how to make things that lasted. A chair that would hold a widow's weight. A bridle that would not snap mid-gallop. A chest that locked tight against thieves and time. No one carved his face in stone. No bard sang of his deeds. But his mark, the small notch he hid beneath every piece, remained. And maybe, somewhere in a castle, or a forgotten attic, that mark still waits, untouched, but not unloved. Because beauty is not only found in palaces. Sometimes, it is made by tired hands, midnight, in silence, for no other reason than to make something good. They said she was older than the village. Said she'd outlived her husband, her children, her own name. She never left the house anymore, except to sweep the step, and even then, only when the wind was kind. But her window was always open, just enough. She watched the street the way trees watch the seasons, not waiting, just witnessing. She saw the children who stole apples, the wives who cried too quietly, the men who drank shame into their boots. She didn't judge. She remembered, because she too had been young once. She too had danced, and fallen, and bled in secret. And though her bones betrayed her now, her mind held every name, every secret, every kindness. Sometimes in the night, someone would knock at her door. A girl with questions, boy with fear. She would make tea, say little, listen more. And by morning, they would go, carrying some invisible thing they hadn't had before. Not wisdom, not magic. Place where someone still saw them, That was all. And that was everything. They had been two. Born in the same hour. A scream for each. They'd shared everything. The same crust of bread. The same lice-ridden blanket. The same dreams of other places. But the plague does not spare. Based on love. One morning his brother coughed. By nightfall he was still. By sunrise, buried beneath frozen dirt. Too hard to dig deep. The village said to move on. To forget. But he could not. So he walked. He didn't know where the path led. Didn't care. He only knew his brother had wanted to see the sea. And somewhere, it waited. He spoke aloud as he walked. As if his twin still walked beside him. And maybe he did. In the breath between footfalls. In the sound of the wind through pine. He would never reach the sea. But he would get closer. Then the grave. And some nights, when he dreamed, he saw two shadows by the shore. They never asked his name. They just called him Bellringer. And he answered. Each day he climbed the narrow steps. Up through the cold stones. Past the carved saints who had long since gone deaf. The bell was old. Cracked slightly on one side. But still true in tone. Like him. No one remembered who hired him. Or when. But the bell rang. Every day. For mass. For death. For weddings. For plague warnings. For feast days that felt more like famine. And he rang it. He had a secret though. One no one knew. Each morning before the first toll. He whispered a name. Just one. A different name every day. Some he knew. Most he did not. Names he heard in dreams. Names forgotten in the dirt. Names never carved in stone. And then, he rang the bell. And for a moment, each name lived again. In sound, in air, in the breath between echoes. It was not much, but it was something. And that was enough. He came every night. Same stone. Same silence. Same question in her eyes. They said she was waiting for her father. Or a brother. Or a lover. No one agreed. But no one interrupted her either. She didn't speak. Not anymore. Once she had laughed like bells. Once she had braided wildflowers into her hair. And danced beneath the summer moon. But then he left, whoever he was. And didn't return. So she waited. And the seasons turned. The wall crumbled beneath her. But she stayed. Wrapped in memory. In the stubborn hope that some doors still open. Even after too long. Children watched her from a distance. Some tried to sit beside her. She let them. Once. And when they left, they felt changed somehow. Like they'd touched. Something deeper than sadness. Something holy. Even if they never knew his name. He had once believed in answers. In rules. In balance. In the idea that suffering meant something. If it was given to God. But time. And war. And loss. Had carved those beliefs away. Now he came here not to speak. But to sit. To breathe in the cold stone. To listen to the silence. And let it fill the spaces where faith used to be. He did not confess. He did not sing. He simply knelt. Sometimes for minutes. Sometimes until dawn. The candle before the altar burned slowly. Its flame a fragile heartbeat in the vast dark. He did not ask for miracles. Only presence. Even if it did not answer. And somehow, that stillness gave him something. Stronger than belief. Gave him peace. And that, after everything, was enough. She mended clothes that no one would wear again. His tunic. His traveling cloak. The one shirt he had left. Unsoiled the day the fever took him. He patched it anyway. Careful even now. As if he might walk in. Mud on his boots. Smile in his eyes. Asking for supper. She knew he would not. But her hands remembered how to care. So she sewed. Thread through cloth. Stitch by slow stitch. Binding memory to fiber. Binding silence to time. The hearth whispered behind her. The candle leaned close. Outside, the world moved on. But in this small room, he was not gone. Not yet. Not while the thread held. Not while her hands still knew how to love. In the quietest way. He did not speak much. Not to men. But to sheep. And to stars. He was a poet. Each night, when the world curled in on itself, he climbed the hill, sat where the wind whispered his name, and played, not well, not with skill, but with soul, his flute, a hollow reed he'd carved himself, worn smooth by years of breath and dreaming. The sheep didn't mind, the stars seemed to listen. He sang old songs, half-remembered hymns, lullabies from a mother long buried, verses no one else knew anymore. There he was not poor, not forgotten, not lonely. He was part of something vast, silent, endless. And when he died, they found him on the hill, flute beside him, face turned to the sky, smiling. The boy was always dirty, quiet. No one noticed him, except the candle maker. The old man saw how he lingered, how he stared through the window, like someone watching the moon. So one day, he let him in, didn't speak, just handed him a wick. Together they poured the wax, watched it cool, dipped it again. The boy said nothing, but his hands, they remembered, and the candles they made burned straighter, brighter, longer. The boy came every day, even when it rained, even when he limped. The old man taught him how to color the wax with berries, how to carve the base with hidden patterns, how to light it without letting the flame jump. He didn't call him apprentice. He called him boy. And the boy didn't need more. Years passed. The old man grew slow. One day he didn't wake. And the boy, no longer quite a boy, lit every candle in the shop, one by one, all night, until the sun came. The village said it was the most beautiful thing they'd ever seen. But he didn't do it for them. He did it for the one who had seen him, when he was still, invisible. They said the valley drowned in a single night, that the rains came too hard, the river grew too bold, and the village vanished beneath its hunger. The bell tower remained, half swallowed, its iron mouth silenced. But he still came, every winter, to listen. He had lived there once, before the waters took the fields, before the government promised more and gave less, before his father's voice went quiet. Now he stood on the edge, where land met memory, and waited, because some nights, when the moon was right, and the snow fell sideways, he swore he could hear it, a bell, ringing beneath the water, muffled, mourning, patient. He didn't tell anyone. Some things are too sacred to explain. But he knew what he heard. And he bowed his head, and whispered, Amen. No one knew where she came from. She simply appeared, walking the road, with bare feet and a bundle, tied in faded blue cloth. She did not ask for help. She did not look lost. She walked like one who had walked far, through war, through fire, through sorrow. Children watched her pass. Some offered apples. She took them with a smile, and left behind a whisper of rosemary. They said she was searching for something. Daughter, grave, memory. But the truth was simpler. She walked, because walking was how she remembered. With every step, she brought the past forward, through fields, through villages, through time. And when she was gone, and she was one morning, the road remembered her, because the earth never forgets. The weight of sorrow, that moves, with purpose. In the beginning there was a clock, but it did not count the days. It counted the night, silently, patiently, tick by backward tick. It sliced the darkness into pieces, measured not by sun or stars, but by silence. It stood in the heart of a forgotten city, a city with no true name, only one that travelers whispered. I don't quite remember. No maps showed it. No songs sang of it. But it was there, wrapped in quiet ivy, listening. This clock was not made by any king, nor saint, nor god. It was always there, even when time had not yet begun. Tick slowly, counting not what passed, but what remained. Many had come to see it. Most had turned back. Few touched it, and those who did, they stopped growing older, not younger, not still, just paused, held in a night that never fully ended. Then came a girl. Her name was Ashley, and she did not turn back. Ashley was no princess, no child of prophecy, no lost daughter of stars. But her eyes, they were white, not blind, not glowing, just emptied of color, as if they saw through the world, into its hollow underside. She walked barefoot on the black road, the stones warm with forgotten breath. Around her, the city bent slightly, walls leaning in, windows half shut, as if the buildings themselves were listening. She did not speak, not even to herself, but inside her, deep in the slow river of her mind. Something had tasted the night, and wanted more. Night in this place had a flavor, not sweet, not bitter, like the silence of falling snow on the roof of a house you haven't entered in years. She didn't know why she'd come, only that she had, and that the clock was calling. There is a place beneath the city, known only to those who stop asking questions. It's called Where Day Comes to Die. Library, of sorts, but the books there cannot be read, not with the eyes, only with what remains after dreaming ends. Every spine is deep blue, every page blank, until you stop looking for meaning. Ashley entered without knocking. She was not afraid, but neither was she ready. The air smelled of burnt paper and long-held breath. One book pulled itself from the shelf. It did not fall, chose her. She opened it, and the pages whispered her own voice back to her. You will die 1 hour before the day ends. You will know it, but you will not escape it. The words curled in her ears like threads of smoke, familiar, like something her mother once said in a dream. She couldn't quite remember. Behind her, a great hourglass flipped itself. Ash poured upward. She knew then. Night was winning. Ashley returned to the streets. But they were no longer streets. They were graveyards of breath. People stood still, mid-step, mid-laugh, mid-sip, as if a painter had forgotten to finish the scene. All were asleep, but not the kind of sleep you wake from. Their eyes were closed, but their shadows still moved. It was as if they dreamed not their own dreams, but the dreams of someone long dead, someone who never forgave the world for waking. Ashley passed among them, touched the shoulder of a girl, clutching a paper bird. The girl did not move, but the bird unfolded, fluttered once, twice, and flew. A ripple of breath moved through the alley. Ashley whispered, "To wake this city, I must stop the clock." But clocks do not stop easily, especially those that never started. She found him beneath the gate, where names once entered the city. He was tall, but not in a way that cast fear, more like an idea, given human shape. His coat moved without wind, and where he walked, no shadow followed. He held an hourglass, but the grains inside were not sand. They were ink, low, alive. He spoke without sound. "You are late," he said, "but that is the only way to be on time." Ashley didn't ask who he was. She knew. He was the warden of the clock, the keeper of the last tick. He did not judge, only measured, and he had been measuring her since before she was born. "Why did you come?" he asked. Ashley replied, in the voice of her mother, in the voice of her future self. Because night forgot how to end. He nodded once, and the ink in his glass was. In the heart of a city lost to memory stood a tower that neither time nor man could touch. Its stones were worn smooth by the passage of silence, and its windows glowed faintly, though no flame burned within. From its peak hung a clock unlike any other, an ancient thing, wrought not for hours or minutes, but for counting the endless, unyielding night. Tick by backward tick, it sliced the dark into fragments of stillness, measuring shadows that stretched beyond knowing. No one knew who built this clock. No one heard its voice, except those who dared to listen deeply, those who felt the night's cold breath upon their skin, and wondered what lay beyond the edge of day. Ashley was a girl not born of light, nor shaped by the warmth of day. Her hair was silver like moonlight caught in water. Her eyes, blank and pale, held the weight of stories not yet told. She walked barefoot on the black stone roads, the stones humming faintly beneath her feet, as if greeting an old friend who had long been lost. Around her, the city leaned inward, walls tilting like the pages of a half-forgotten book. No sound came from the lips of stone, but the air itself seemed to whisper, not words but promises. Ashley did not speak. She did not laugh. She did not cry. She only moved, and with every step, the night bent closer, as if listening. Beneath the city's restless surface lay a secret place, a library where no book was ever read. The shelves stretched endlessly, bent under the weight of midnight blue bindings, each volume empty of words, except for those the reader whispered into its silence. Ashley entered. The air was thick with forgotten breath. Candles floated, their flames flickering without fuel. She reached out, and a book moved toward her. It opened itself gently, revealing pages as blank as the sky before dawn. And yet, words appeared. A voice, hers and not hers, echoed softly. You will know when the day is done, for your time and the day's time are one, and your end will come 1 hour before the dawn. The book closed. An hourglass near her spilled its sands upward, and the night deepened. Ashley stepped outside. The city slept, frozen mid-motion, as if caught in a dream that had forgotten how to end. A woman paused, teacup half raised. A child stood with a paper bird unfolding its wings. A man bent over a letter that would never be finished. Their eyes were closed, yet their shadows shifted gently, like breathing creatures trapped between moments. Ashley touched the boy's shoulder. The paper bird fluttered free. For a moment the air rippled. Then stillness returned. The night whispered, "To wake the city, the clock must be silenced." Beneath an archway draped in ivy stood a man without shadow. His face was smooth like polished stone, his eyes dark pools reflecting the abyss. In his hands, he held an hourglass filled not with sand, but with ink, thick and slow, bleeding through time itself. He spoke without voice. "You are late, yet in this place, late is the only way to be on time." Ashley nodded. She was both ready and not ready, for this was the warden of the clock, keeper of the last forgotten tick, measuring the moments that no one else could see. Ashley followed the warden through streets that folded like paper, through alleys where shadows whispered secrets no ear could catch. She learned the city was alive with stories, not stories told aloud, but stories that breathed beneath the stones, waiting to be remembered. Every corner held a memory, every silence held a song, and every shadow was a page in the endless book. The clock had written in the language of night. At the edge of the city lay a garden, where dreams long forgotten grew wild. Ashley wandered among the tangled branches, where flowers bloomed in colors no painter knew. and the air tasted of stars and forgotten wishes. She picked a single blossom, its petals soft as a sigh, and held it close. In that moment she understood. The night was not merely absence, but a place where what was lost might bloom again. Ashley returned to the tower. The clock's ticking grew louder, not backward now but forward, toward an hour yet unseen. She placed her hand upon the face of the clock. The stones hummed beneath her fingers. The night held its breath, and in that pause, Ashley heard a whisper, promise, beginning. There was a girl who walked the forest alone. She wasn't brave, not in the way songs pretend. She was quiet, careful, listening. She knew where the nettles grew softest, where the foxes watched but never showed themselves. She knew the trees not by name, but by breath. The villagers called it cursed land, said the forest swallowed souls. But she knew better. It had swallowed her mother, and her mother before that. Not in death, but in devotion. For this was where women went when the world above forgot them. When husbands drank too deep. When the hunger crept too close. When the priest turned his back. The forest was not kind, but it was fair, and it gave roots that calmed the cough, berries to stop the bleeding, a bark that eased the ache of grief. She never asked too much, only enough, and the forest, it remembered her, even after the villagers forgot her name. When winter came, and the sickness swept in, they came to her door, whispering, and she gave them what they asked, not for coin, but for silence, because the forest never demanded thanks, only respect, and she too had become part of its roots. He didn't know how old he was. No one counted things like that. But he remembered the candle. It was the last one in the house. Too short to use, too sacred to waste. His mother had saved it for something important, but now she was gone, and his sister burned with fever. So he lit it. The flame danced, gentle at first, then bold, then quiet again. He held her hand, though hers was too hot. She didn't speak, not anymore. He didn't pray. He didn't know how. Instead he whispered stories, ones he half remembered, ones she used to tell him. Before the coughing came, he told her about the wolf who turned into a girl, the moon that fell in love with a stonecutter, the boy who hid a dragon in his pocket. She didn't answer, but she breathed, and as the wax shrank into itself, as darkness curled like smoke around them, he kept whispering, until morning. She lived, or maybe she didn't. He couldn't recall, but he remembered the candle, and the stories, and the silence that came after. She came each year, same day, same hour, before the bells, before anyone would see. The grave had no stone, just a dip in the earth, where the grass never grew quite right. She brought bread, simple thing, rough crust, barely risen, still warm if she baked it just before. The priest said it was foolish. The neighbors never asked, but she came, because he had loved bread, even in the hunger years, even when they split one crust, between 3 mouths. She remembered how he'd save her the corner, the part with the most crunch. He hadn't lived long. No one did back then. Cough, fever, silence. Now she lived longer than he ever did. Old bones, weak eyes, but the bread still rose. She laid it there, covered it with rosemary, and whispered his name once, only once, then turned, and walked back into the mist. The crows watched from the stones. The wind carried her breath away, but the bread remained, and the memory with it. He had played once in a lord's hall, when his fingers were younger, when his sight had not yet faded, but time has a way of unmaking, and so he came here now, to the corner near the hearth, to the drinkers who didn't clap, to the smoke that curled through his strings, but the music still lived. It remembered him. String a sigh, a ghost, a thread tied to someone who had already gone. He didn't play for coin anymore, or praise, or women. He played for something deeper, something that doesn't need a name. The child watched, barefoot, thin, silent. He'd seen her before, always near the door, always listening. One day he would give her the harp, when his fingers forgot too much. But not yet. Tonight the strings still remembered. And so did he. He dreamed of the sea, though he'd never seen it. Though the nearest shore was leagues and lifetimes away. He had drawn it once, with charcoal on stolen parchment, a ship with wide sails, waves like teeth, stars like lanterns. By day he dug ditches, repaired fences, bent beneath sacks of grain that would never feed him. But by night, he sailed. In dreams he was captain, explorer, free. He knew the wind by name. He called to gulls with laughter. He tasted salt in air that never reached his village. They called him simple, low, strange, but they never saw his ship, never saw him standing tall, at the edge of the world, breath full of sky. He would die in this village, buried beside men who never dreamed, but the sea would still be waiting, just past the stars, just past the silence, where all forgotten captains sail. Stories like these help you drift into dreams. If you feel the pull of forgotten towers and clocks that count the night, then stay with us. Subscribe to our channel to walk further into the dark, where stories whisper and time slows. Crescent Moon, click the link below to join the journey. And let us know in the comments, what did the night show you tonight?